Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So about a week ago, I reacted to some of your hypothetical trades, whether or not they were fair deals or absolutely ludicrous, that you sent in on Instagram. I greatly appreciate it. And then a couple of days ago, I dropped my updated top 15 offseason player trade board. So it's only right that now I cook up some trades and you guys can see if I'm absolutely crazy or if these are going to be some good deals. As you can imagine, this is going to include a lot of the guys that were within the top 15 trade board. So yeah, let's dive into it. Let me know what you think of these trades if I'm absolutely out of my mind. I tried to include a bunch of teams. I think I ended up having like 25 or 26 different teams being involved in these 20 different ones. There's obviously some teams that have like 5 or 6 trades in this because they have guys that are on that, multiple guys that are within that top 15 that I cooked up. Pittsburgh Penguins looking at you. So yeah, let's dive into it. Let's not waste any time. And up first, we have Ryan O'Reilly heading to the New Jersey Devils for Dawson Mercer, the 50th overall pick in this year's draft in the 94th. When looking at Ryan O'Reilly, would be the perfect third-line center in New Jersey. Imagine having a 3-center deep lineup of Jack Hughes if he could actually stay healthy, Nico Hischier, and then Ryan O'Reilly, who still only makes $4.5 million. No longer maybe has the offensive ceiling to be a elite second-line center, but I think for a third-line center on a team like New Jersey that has struggled with that third-line center position, and especially their depth scoring, once Jack Hughes went down, that forward core kind of collapsed. So yeah, I think he's a perfect fit there. Dawson Mercer, if you can get the 2023 version of Dawson Mercer, that is a damn good player. At 21 years old, this guy had like 27 goals and 56 points. So for Nashville, you get a young NHLer that I think is still worth easily a first-round pick, as well as a mid-second and a late third. I think it's about fair value. Maybe New Jersey might have to throw in another third-round pick or something like that, but I think it's a win-win. Nashville gets a lot younger and gets potential, not franchise piece, but a potential top 6 forward for the future that they can pair with, hopefully, the center that they take at 5th overall. Next up, we got a Jared McCann trade. He checked in at like 12th on my trade board. Goes to Detroit. Steve Yzerman definitely needs to make some aggressive moves. Considering their young defenseman trio, I'm not sure he's going to bring in some kind of big like Rasmus Anderson kind of guy that needs some big extension. But I think McCann makes all the sense in the world to add some serious scoring, which they did lack to a degree. Tarasenko did not exactly work out for them this season. McCann has 2 years left at $5 million. This will not be his only trade, not his only in-division trade. But yeah, McCann, not a 40-goal guy like in 2023 when he did have 40 goals, but can be a consistent 30 and 30 kind of guy. They would have to give up a decent amount, though. Michael Brandsegg-Nygaard, who they took at 15th overall, did not have the best draft year, +1. Still a pretty valuable guy, worth a late first-round pick. And a 2027 first-round pick, you can make this top 10 protected if they're not a playoff team. In the 76th overall, this is Steve Yzerman swinging for the fences, trying to bring in much-needed goal scoring outside of his top 3 players to potentially make the playoffs because he might get fired if he doesn't make the playoffs. I think it's a fair deal for both parties, again, given the fact that McCann is a $7.5 to $8 million winger, and for the next 2 years, you're going to have him at like a $3 million surplus. He is extremely, extremely valuable. If they got 2 first-round picks and a second for Bjorkstrand and Gord, McCann's going to get a decent amount as well. Next up, Isaac Howard, who is not wanting to sign with Tampa Bay Lightning right now. I don't know why I have LA there. That's supposed to be Tampa Bay, obviously. They get Michael Bunting at 50% retained. This is a little bit of a wild trade, which would be $2.25 million. So basically 1 year of Michael Bunting, basically a rental, a solid 20 and 20 guy that would be good in terms of their depth scoring, which they have lacked in prior years. And they still get a 4th-round pick. And Nashville gets Isaac Howard, who they probably could insert immediately on their NHL roster, considering this guy won the goddamn Hobie Baker. So yeah, for Tampa, I don't expect them to trade Howard just for like a 2nd-round pick. He's not getting a 1st-round pick. People keep on like hypothetically mocking him for that. They don't have the leverage to get that. I think that they would rather have basically do a rental early and get a 50% retention from Nashville. Next up, we got a Kyrou and Dobson swap. I think this makes sense for both parties, especially if the Islanders plan on taking Matthew Schaefer, if they believe, like me, I think Matthew Schaefer can be a pretty damn good defenseman 2 seasons from now, an elite guy in 3 to 4 years. I think he is that special of a prospect. Dobson is definitely going to be better in the next 2 years, but move off Dobson, bring in an elite goal scorer in Jordan Kyrou, who has 3 straight years of 30 goals, 2 of those being over 35 goals. Such a skilled and fast player. Add that offensive oomph. Maybe you take a step back from your defense core this season, But you move off him. Dobson's going to get around an $8 million deal, which is exactly to Cairo. And for St. Louis, they definitely need more of an impact potential franchise defenseman than say forwards, where Robert Thomas is without a doubt better than Jordan Cairo. And they have so many young forwards coming up within the system. This has been mocked a decent amount of times, and I like it a decent amount. I think these players, Cairo's 1 or 2 years older than Dobson. I think this is damn good value in terms of these. You can maybe attach, I don't know, considering Dobson had a down year, maybe a third-round pick also going to St. Louis, but they're very comparable in terms of their value. Next up, the Vegas Golden Knights get Rickard Rakell after a disappointing second-round exit, especially goal-scoring-wise, not scoring in their final 2 games. They had a guy like Rakell. They trade away Nick Hage's RFA rights, 26 years old. Not like that young, but Pittsburgh can use him in terms of the guys that they've moved out. And we have another Pittsburgh hypothetical trade involving a defenseman and Trevor Conley and 2 second-round picks. Trevor Conley did not exactly kill it this year at the college level, but still is a pretty valuable prospect, went 19th overall. Yeah, this would be another hyper-aggressive Vegas Golden Knights move. Rakell's only making $5 million for the next 3 years, and that basically is the remaining window with guys like Stone and Pietrangelo, 33, 34 years old. Might be a little bit too much for Vegas to give up, but I think for a guy like Rakell that did have 35 goals, 35 assists, I think that's what the price is going to be considering he's so cost-controlled going forward. Next up, Calgary getting Jiri Peterka for Rasmus Andersson in the 54th overall pick. I think we can all agree Peterka does have more value considering he's 23 years old coming off a season where he had 68 points in 77 games. This is, of course, hinging on him wanting to sign in Calgary, which some guys don't want to do. But yeah, for Buffalo, you pick up a right-handed defenseman, which they badly need. They move off Peterka, who apparently doesn't really want to sign that much long-term there. But if Calgary is willing to give him 8 years at $7.7 million or something like that, I think you do that in a heartbeat, considering Calgary needs those young offensive difference makers, because they're probably not going to suck the next 2 to 3 years in terms of getting a true franchise piece. So Calgary moves off Anderson before they have to give him some big contract, considering they have Zane Parekh coming up within the system. Meanwhile, Buffalo gets Anderson, probably moves off Bowen Byram. We have Bowen Byram hypotheticals coming up, and really improves their right side, which they badly need to do. Next up, also another Peterka one, this time going to Carolina. Almost said Calgary again. Carolina for Scott Morrow. Jesperi Kotkaniemi's basically a throw-in. I guess he can play the third-line center for Buffalo. I'm not saying that he has like some immense value in this. It's mainly Morrow in the 2026 Dallas pick. Scott Morrow's a right-handed defenseman. What does Buffalo need? Right-handed defenseman. When looking at Scott Morrow, I think that he can be a solid 18, 19-minute-a-night guy next season. Was highly productive at the AHL level, like 0.8 points per game. So he can eventually be a legit top 4 defenseman for them. Again, Kotkaniemi can fill a need next year in terms of like Peyton Krebs being their third line center right now. And Carolina gets some much needed goal scoring when looking at what Peterka can bring to the table the last 2 years, around high 20s goals on a Carolina, can be a 30, maybe even 35 goal guy. You sign him to a similar contract as Seth Jarvis, 7 years, $7.5 million. And you're off to the races in terms of bringing in top-end talent. It would stink to lose a guy like Morrow, but they're fine in terms of their young prospects. Next up, Erik Karlsson. Pittsburgh moving off a defenseman like I referenced before. Karlsson, $3 million retained from Morgan Riley, the 62nd overall pick in a 2027 second-round pick. Kyle Dubas is the guy that extended Morgan Riley in Toronto, so clearly he likes him to a degree and can maybe flip Morgan Riley down the line. Toronto gets a legit potential number 1 puck-moving defenseman, far better at moving the puck right now than a Morgan Riley, just a better overall player, and at $7 million would be making around Morgan Riley money. You could say that Pittsburgh, if they're going to trade Karlsson, they'd want like some kind of first or some kind of elite prospect. That is going to be a little bit tough to a degree. Next up, the LA Kings get Jonathan Marchessault. The Nashville Predators get Alex Turcotte in a 2026 third-round pick. For LA, you bring in Ken Holland to try to win now. You're not developing the farm system, retooling with the Ken Holland. You are going aggressive. They do have some money this offseason. And Marchessault still, although he has 4 years left, maybe those final 2 years might be kind of ass. He is no doubt worth $5.5 million next season. He put up, I believe, around like 60-point pace this year. Still can goal score at a pretty high rate. So LA brings in him. Turcotte maybe can turn it around in Nashville. If anything, Nashville just wants to maybe get out of the Marchessault contract and just get younger. I think it's a win-win for both parties. Some people are going to scream that Turcotte is still going to be this beast. He's 24 years old at this point. He had like 25 points in 68 games. If you're LA, I'm not sure that the minutes are going to be there next year for him. That's going to change anything massively. If you can bring in a guy like Marchessault that could be a difference maker, I think you do that. And he fits. He's younger than Kopitar and Doughty at this point. It's not like they have this young core. Next up, Coleman to Utah. Calgary gets Michelli. Similar thought process here for Calgary. They get younger, a forward that in his first 2 seasons at the NHL level was like 60-point pace. This year his role did diminish a little bit. Maybe Utah just wants to move off him, and they get a guy like Coleman who is a little bit up there in age, 33 or 34 years old, but has 2 years left at $4.9 million. That's tremendous value. Just Calgary getting younger, which I think that they should do this offseason. You could argue if they're going to trade Coleman, they'd want to get just like a first-round pick or like a decent prospect. But I think Michelli is a really good buy low candidate this summer potentially for a team that has the actual opportunity to play him a decent amount. Next up, this is my favorite trade, as you can imagine. Pajot, the Colorado first and 74th overall for Marco Rossi. When looking at this deal, I think it is pretty fair to a degree, considering the fact apparently that the Philadelphia Flyers were offered Tyson Forrester for Marco Rossi, or a first-round pick for Marco Rossi. This is basically that with the Colorado first-round pick, and they would get a Pajot who makes $5 million next year as a consistent, good third-line center, one of the best face-off takers in the NHL. You get the Colorado pick. You get 74th overall. The Islanders get a potential difference maker down the line and would have the cap space to potentially sign him to his demands. Makes sense. Next up, we got another McCann trade, another in division or to the Atlantic Division trade. Ridley Gregg in the 21st overall. When looking at this, they decided to keep their pick this year. Next year's pick, they're not going to have one in the Gavin McKenna draft. Pretty bold by them. I would potentially move off this pick to get immediate help. Jared McCann is an impact 28-year-old, like I talked about with Detroit. Ridley Gregg, he is on a decently team-friendly deal, 4 years, $3.75 million, and Seattle definitely would like him there. But is he going to turn into a Jared McCann? I don't really think so. Not saying that they are win now right now, but in the next 2 to 3 years, you want to be playing at a pretty high level, and I think Jared McCann definitely can help with that compared to the 21st overall pick in this year's draft, which I just really do not think has that much value. Next up, the Dallas Stars getting Rasmus Ristolainen to improve their right side of the defense. Risto for Dumba, which Dumba's basically a salary cap dump. You'd have to give up a second-round pick probably to dump his $3.75 million. Maverick Bourque is the real piece of this deal, and a 2026 third-round pick. When looking at Ristolainen, 2 more years at $5.1 million. He's actually been playing pretty good in Philadelphia the last couple years. You throw him in Dallas, you throw him with a Thomas Harley or a Miro Heiskanen. I think he can be a damn good 21 minute a night, probably 20 minute a night guy considering their top 3, maybe even 19 minutes a night, and just really effective in that role for the Dallas Stars. I think that's a good way to potentially get a right-handed defenseman by dumping Dumba. It would stink to lose Maverick Bourque, but if you're getting a guy that can be a high-impact guy, I think you potentially do it. Peterka to Chicago for Connor Murphy, right-handed defense, as we've talked about nonstop with the Buffalo Sabres. And Nick Lourdes. I know Lourdes was insane this year in the OHL, but best case scenario, he becomes JJ Peterka. I don't know how to put it simply, but Lourdes, yes, it's promising, but you have the opportunity to acquire a guy that has been so good at the NHL level and is still only 23 years old. I think you potentially do that. Connor Murphy's kind of expendable, but yeah, Lourdes, love you, but see you later. If I'm Kyle Davidson and this kind of offer comes across my table, and again, for Buffalo, you get an impact right-handed guy, and Lourdes could eventually become a decent goal scorer at the NHL level, 30 goal potential for sure. Next up, Philadelphia gets John Gibson. Anaheim gets Sam Ersson in the 30th overall pick. I think this is actually now 31st or 32nd, considering it's Edmonton's. But yeah, Philadelphia, their goalies were so bad last year. They had a cumulative minus 35 goals saved above expected. So I'm not saying John Gibson's going to be the goalie of the future for the next 5 years. He's 31 years old at this point. But just to stabilize it, I think that does make sense to a degree, at least take a step in terms of their rebuild. Gibson being the mentor to whoever their next guy is, I think makes sense. They have a shit ton of picks, and Sam Ersson for the Anaheim perspective could be a decent backup to Lukas Dostal. Next up, Braden Shen to Minnesota at 30% retained, so around $4.2 million, 3 years remaining, and a 2026 second-round pick for Marco Rossi. Minnesota, you get maybe a better stylistic fit for your second line. I wouldn't like Minnesota to do this. I think they should just re-sign Marco Rossi, but it would make sense to a degree, pick up an asset. And if you're St. Louis, you pick up yet another young forward, decently cheap. You pair him with a guy like Dylan Holloway, great buy low kind of guys by the St. Louis Blues. Makes some sense. Erik Karlsson to the Carolina Hurricanes again. Kotkaniemi, Justin Poirier, Dallas's first-round pick in 2026. Carolina needs puck-moving defensemen. If you watched my video yesterday, they are so bad at exiting their zone with possession. And what does Erik Karlsson do? Exactly that. Justin Poirier has been killing it in the QMJHL. Kotkaniemi can be a solid third-line center for the Pittsburgh Penguins to keep them somewhat afloat with Sidney Crosby. And then you pick up that first-round pick from the Dallas Stars. Another Marco Rossi trade, this time Rickard Rakell, two guys that were very high on my trade board. Make it happen. Minnesota picks up a good goal-scoring winger that still has 3 years left at $5 million. Pittsburgh buys low on a 23-year-old. They have the salary cap to sign him to the big deal. And then eventually, once they draft their franchise pieces, Marco Rossi is looking at a solid second-line center role for their rebuild. This makes all the sense in the world for me, considering the two teams and where they stand. Then we got, this one might piss off Ranger fans, but I got Kreider heading to Toronto. New York Rangers get OEL. I think that they need puck-moving defensemen. They need an improvement in terms of their defense score. OEL still has a lot of game remaining. And Bobby McCann's a pretty underrated guy, only making like $1.4 million next season. So the Rangers pick up some depth scoring. I understand talent-wise, a lot of people, Chris Kreider definitely is the biggest upside of these guys. He could bounce back, especially playing with an Austin Matthews or a William Nylander to really pop off, or John Tavares if they re-sign him. But Kreider at 3 years left at $6.5 million just really doesn't have that much value considering what he did last season. So yeah, I also have another Kreider deal coming up. Bowen Byram is in a weird spot with Buffalo. I also don't think that he has a ton of value. So you just swap the two. The New York Rangers, as I just said, need defenseman help. The Buffalo Sabres bring in a potential high-impact forward, a veteran forward that has won a lot, hasn't won a Stanley Cup, but in terms of making the playoffs, makes sense to a degree. But yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think about these hypothetical trades? Which ones were absolute ass cheeks? Which ones do you think were actually pretty good and both teams would accept? I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.